Hello students, welcome to Learner's Planet. Let us continue with the chapter Diversity in Living Organisms. In the earlier session, I explained the basic characteristic features of the kingdom Monera. You know which type of organisms are present in this kingdom? They are all unicellular, prokaryotic organisms which may have the cell wall or they may not have the cell wall. And besides this, they are actually having the different mode of nutrition also. That means they can be autotrophic or they can be heterotrophic, right? And of course they are subclassified as into two groups, that is Eubacteria and the Archaeobacteria, right? So now in today's session we will move forward in the next complex kingdom, that is the next kingdom which is known as the protista. So in today's session I'm going to explain the basic characteristic features of the kingdom protista. Well, this group is also known as protista, and the important features of this group is that the organisms which are found in the kingdom protista, they all are made up of eukaryotic cells. Besides this, they all are unicellular. So all living organisms which are unicellular and are eukaryotic, they are together forming the kingdom protista, right? And besides this, the cell wall, again it may be present or it may be absent. Till here now you can just compare this group with the Monera. In the Monera you had seen the similar features. You remember? Monera, they are also unicellular and they also may have the cell wall or they may not have the cell wall. But the important difference between these two kingdoms is that in the Monera, the organisms are made up of prokaryotic cells, while the organisms in the group Protista are made up of eukaryotic cells. Regarding nutrition, they can either synthesize their own food, so they can be autotrophic or they may be heterotrophic. That means they can obtain the food from other organisms or from the surrounding, right? Reproduction, these organisms, they can reproduce by the asexual method. And which asexual method is observed? It is binary fission and multiple fission. Besides this, it can also reproduce by the conjugation process. Binary fission is a type of process in which a cell splits into two daughter cells, whereas in multiple fission, a single cell splits into many daughter cells. So this type of this type of division is also observed in the monerans. But there, the multiple fission is not taking place. The organisms are not reproducing by the multiple fission, right? And the other process which they are following, these protistants, they are following for reproduction is the conjugation. So conjugation is a type of sexual reproduction which is observed in these lower organisms. Besides this, the important feature, the new typical feature in the protista which is different from that of the monerans, is the locomotion. In this case, these organisms are having the special parts within the cell which can help in the movement of the cell, right, or the movement of the organism. And that locomotion, it can occur by the flagella, cilia or pseudopodia. So these are the basic this is the basic summary of the important features of the group Protista. Now let us observe each and every type one by one. So the eukaryotic, the first feature is that these organisms, they all are made up of eukaryotic cell. And I hope you understand the concept of eukaryotic cell very well, right? Am I right or wrong? The cell which is having a well-defined nucleus and the membrane-bound organelles, are known as the eukaryotic cells, and the organisms which are made up of eukaryotic cell is known as a eukaryotic organism, right? So well-defined nucleus means what? The genetic material is present which is enclosed inside the nuclear membrane. The material which is present inside this nucleus is separated from cytoplasm with the help of porous, discontinuous double nuclear membrane. Now, by these basic points, I hope you remember now you can recall the structure of the nucleus. Am I right? Fine. So, membrane-bound organelles, the organelles which are surrounded by the membrane, like endoplasmic reticulum, lysosomes, vacuoles, then Golgi apparatus, mitochondria. All these are the membrane-bound organelles. So, with the addition of these organelles, now can you imagine that these organisms which are present in the group protista, they must be more complex than the prokaryotic organisms, because in those organisms the nuclear material, that is the genetic material, was not separated from the cytoplasm, and besides that the membrane bound organelles were also absent. So the basic functions were taking place in the plasma membrane itself or in the cytoplasm, right? So now you can imagine that these eukaryotic cells, they must have originated from the prokaryotic cells. That means the eukaryotic cells are advanced as compared to those of the primitive organism. These prokaryotic organisms. So prokaryotic or the monorans, they are primitive, and these protistans, these are advanced with respect to the monomer group, right? Further, these organisms, they are unicellular. Again, it must be a very simple concept. I mean, this concept must be very clear to you as you are learning it since long, right? So these simple organisms, they are made up of a single cell, and this single cell is able to perform all the life-sustaining functions of the all life-sustaining functions. And since the single cell is performing all these important functions, so they are living as an independent organism, right? So these are the basic two important facts regarding the protista. Next is the mode of nutrition. So as I already said that these organisms, they can be autotrophic or they can be heterotrophic. Again, I don't think there is a need to explain this autotrophic or heterotrophic. Autotrophic means what? Those which are able to synthesize their own food. Heterotrophic, which are obtaining their food from some other sources. They are not synthesizing it themselves, right? So the examples of this category are, see, the autotrophic organisms, examples are algae and the diatoms. Fine. These algae are typical or specific examples of this algae is Chlamydomonas and Chlorella, and there are so many others also. Fine. The diatoms, they are the simplest phytoplanktons. Fine. From this point, can you think one important part now? That usually these organisms are aquatic. That means they are found in water, right? Now the next is that they can be heterotrophic, and heterotrophic means they are dependent on other organisms for their food. So under this, the different categories are observed, like it can be parasitic, saprophytic, or it can be holozoic. Parasitic means the organism is using the simplified food material from the living host body. Saprophytic organisms are consuming the simplified food material, and they are actually feeding or they are obtaining it from the dead and decayed matter. So can you make out the difference here in parasitic and saprophytic? Parasitic, using the simplified but from the living body. Saprophytic, they are using the food from in the simplified form, in the simplified form from the dead material, right? Then is the Holozoic. In the Holozoic, the organisms are ingesting the food material and then they are digesting them within the body. So since these are unicellular, so I must say that the food is digested within the cell, inside the vacuole actually. Fine. Now here are some examples given like Paramecium, Amoeba, Euglena, Trypanosoma, Plasmodium, Leishmania, etc. The list is of course endless. There are so many different organisms. Fine. Out of this, I can say that, see, initially I said that these organisms, they are usually found in water. They all are aquatic. But now I have to redefine it. You know why? Because here the new type is introduced, that is parasitic. And if it is parasitic, then what type of medium is it utilizing? It is living inside the host body. Although it is either in the blood or in saliva or in different sources, but it is not directly in some aquatic water body, right? So here I must say that they can be aquatic or they can be parasitic. Fine. Now let me show you some pictures. See, these are the examples, or these are the pictures of autotrophic and heterotrophic protistans, right? The first picture shown here is the Chlamydomonas, and this Chlamydomonas is a type of algae. It is a unicellular type of algae, right? This particular organism, you know what is the special property of this organism? It is having this prominent chloroplast here. You can see this U-shaped structure here. It is the chloroplast. Fine. And this chloroplast is helping in the synthesis of food material. Fine. Besides this, it is having the flagella. So it can move around. Now, from this point, can you think that why there is a need for the for this new kingdom, that is protista? It is from this point only. Usually plants are autotrophic and non-motile. But since this organism is autotrophic, so it must come under the plant group. But along with that property, it is also a motile organism, right? And due to this motility, now it cannot be placed in the plant kingdom. So there is a confusion that where such organisms should be placed which are having the characteristic features of both the kingdoms, right? That is the animal kingdom as well as the plant kingdom. So due to such type of problems, this new kingdom was introduced in which all of the unicellular and eukaryotic organisms were placed. So Chlamydomonas, it is an example of unicellular motile organism, right? And of course it is autotrophic. Similarly, the another example is related to diatoms. Now these diatoms, of course, they are found in water and they are the simplest phytoplanktons. Phytoplanktons means what? Phyto means having plant origin and planktons means organisms. So they are living in, they are the aquatic organisms which are having the which are actually autotrophic in nature. Fine. Then comes the heterotrophic organisms. So example is like amoeba and the trypanosoma. Both of these organisms are heterotrophic. Amoeba, it shows holozoic mode of nutrition. That means they can ingest the food material into the vacuole, into the food vacuole, in which the digestive enzymes are present and they can digest the food material, right? So such organisms, they are actually moving around with the help of pseudopodia, and thus with the help of pseudopodia itself they are able to capture the food material. So since they are heterotrophic, definitely they are lacking the chloroplast. Trypanosoma, it is parasitic in nature. This trypanosoma, you might be knowing this fact that this trypanosoma is actually it is an organism that causes the sleeping sickness in the organisms. It is of course common in African countries, and it is initially present in the saliva of mosquito. When these mosquitoes bite a healthy person, the saliva is transferred over there, and along with the saliva, trypanosoma is also transmitted. And further, this organism will grow inside the blood and will cause the sleeping sickness in these living organisms, that is human beings of course. Fine. So these are some examples. Now besides this, another example is the euglena. This organism is actually having a special feature. You know what? It is autotrophic as well as it is heterotrophic. That means what? It means that it is living in water and is able to obtain its food from surrounding. Fine. And it is able to digest it. But when there is there is a lack of food material, right? When there is no food material present in surrounding, then these organisms, they can synthesize their own food. That means they are even provided with the chloroplast, and this chloroplast is actually participating in the synthesis of food material by using the light energy, and for that it has to move towards the light, right? So for that it is having this flagella, and there is an eye spot here. This eye spot will help in detecting the direction of light. So this is how it is showing the mixotrophic mode of nutrition. Mixotrophic means the one which is having both type of nutrition, that is heterotrophic as well as the autotrophic. Well, now this was regarding the nutrition. Now further, let me explain some basic other properties also. And students, this next feature is related to the cell wall. As I already said, that these organisms may have the cell wall or they may not have the cell wall. So now from examples given above, it may be quite easy for you to understand that usually organisms which are showing the autotrophic mode of nutrition, they are having the cell wall, and the others which are not having this autotrophic mode, that means which are following the heterotrophic mode of nutrition, they usually lack the cell wall, right? For example, it must be very clear, like in amoeba there is no cell wall, trypanosoma there is no cell wall, right? Similarly, paramecium or leishmania, all are not having the cell wall, whereas the chlamydomonas, then chlorella, euglena, these organisms, they are having the cell wall. Fine. Well, the next property is related to the locomotion. In these type of organisms, or the organisms that belong to protista, they are having the structures which is supporting the movement of the organisms. You understand what is locomotion? Locomotion means change in the position or the location of an organism. So these organisms can move around with the help of such locomotory organelles or the locomotory structures. You know what type of structures are present to support the locomotion here? It can be cilia, as in the case of paramecium. Then it can be flagella, which is a whip-like structure and is usually present in euglena, chlamydomonas, etc. Fine. Then in some organisms there is the false feet, that is pseudopodia. Pseudo means false, podia means feet. So pseudopodia is present. You know what is this pseudopodia? It is basically the extension of the plasma membrane. So in some organisms, movement occurs due to the changes or extensions of such plasma membrane, right, which is known as pseudopodia. And the example for this is the amoeba. So I can repeat the pictures, I can show you the pictures so as to clarify this point. See, in this slide, this is a picture of paramecium. Can you see these hair-like projections here over the surface? So such hair-like projections over the surface of the cell, it is known as cilia. And this cilia is actually contractile in nature, and it can move to and fro. So this to and fro motion of this cilia with respect to the direction or the stream of water is actually deciding the direction in which this slipper shaped structure is going to move. That means where this paramecium will be moving around. Fine. The flagella. You can make out the difference now. Flagella is a long thread-like or flab-like structure. You can see in this diagram, right? So there are two flagella in the case of Chlamydomonas. The organism Euglena is having a single flagellum, right? So in short, the flagellum is a long thread-like structure which is present as a few in number and is not scattered all over the body surface, right? Like in case of paramecium, cilia is present all over the surface, but of course the number is much more as compared to the flagella. Besides this flagella, it can present in as a single organelle, or it may be present as a bunch over there on the opposite ends of the organism, right? Then in the case of amoeba, there is no such extra extension, but rather this plasma membrane, it is itself it is so much flexible that it can help in the movement of this organism. And of course this flexibility of plasma membrane not only helps in the production or the formation of pseudopodia, but also it provides the irregular shape to the organism. Well, now the next property is related to the reproduction. And I explained to you earlier that these organisms, that is those which belong to protista, they can reproduce either by binary fission method or the multiple fission or by the conjugation method. Binary and multiple fission, it is a sort of asexual reproduction, while conjugation is related to the sexual reproduction. To explain this, I have shown these pictures here. See, this is the amoeba, and this is dividing here into two daughter cells, right? And the process by which amoeba or any other organism can divide into two daughter cells is actually known as the binary fission. So here initially there is the duplication of genetic material, then there is an increase in the cytoplasmic material, and then when the size is large enough, then there is a constriction in between and the cell is divided into two parts. Each cell or each part is having a single nucleus, right? So this is how the two daughter cells are produced by the binary fission. Similarly, this picture is showing the nuclear fission, the binary fission in Euglena. So in this case, the division will start from the flagella. So flagella, it will split into two parts, and then sidewise there is a duplication of the genetic material, there is the increase in the cytoplasmic material, and finally the entire cell is going to divide into or split into two daughter cells. Each cell is having a single flagella and a single copy of DNA material. Besides this, other membrane-bound organelles and the cytoplasm is also present. So this is how these organisms are reproducing by binary fission. In case of multiple fission, you know what happens? Have a look over this picture. This is actually showing the multiple fission, right? Multiple fission means in which the cell is dividing many times and thus many daughter cells are produced through single cycle, right? It is observed in Plasmodium. Plasmodium, I hope you must have heard about this name. It is a protista, it belongs to kingdom protista and is causing malaria in human beings. The vector of this organism is which one? It is the mosquito. Anopheles. Female Anopheles is the carrier of the plasmodium. So actually what happens is how this organism divides. You see there is a single nucleus here, then it will divide into 2 and then into 4, and this is how it is multiplying inside the mother cell. And site-wise it gets surrounded by the cytoplasmic material. Now if the conditions are not favorable, it is going to develop a cyst in its surrounding, and it will wait till the release of these cells will wait till the favorable conditions are available. Fine. So when the favorable conditions return, the this outer cyst and this outer wall, it will burst out, and as it bursts out, the inner cells will become free, and each material or each this part will survive as an independent organism. So now you can see that how this multiple fission is taking place, right? What you have to remember is that these organisms, they can actually reproduce by the fission process, which can result in the production of either two cells or the multiple daughter cells, right? And similarly the conjugation is also taking place, in which the two cells are fusing so as to transfer their material, right? And then the process is taking place. So I will not go in much depth in this topic. I would like to end this session with this part only. Next we will continue with the next kingdom, and that is fungi. So till then, thank you so much. Have a nice day. Goodbye.